Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so I guess we'll get started, and those others can join in if they need to. My name's Madison Rye. I'm from Allied PLM. I'm the engineering director here. Um, I'd like to welcome everybody to our session today, and thank you for joining me. This is one of my favorite add-ons, Cortona for pubs. If you've ever done tech pubs, you know the pain it is to cut and paste and try to keep up to date when there's CAD changes. I'm going to introduce Bill Barnes from CAD IT. We partner with CAD IT because they have the same customer philosophy that we do to support our customers in the best way possible. And he is excellent at helping align a solution for what you need. So with that, I'll introduce Bill Barnes.
Thanks, Madison, and happy to be here talking to everybody. A little bit about CAD IT as we get going here. So CAD IT, are a specialist partner. We focus in the technical publications and service lifecycle management area, and partner with Allied PLM to bring our expertise into this area and hopefully help you see some value out of the Cortona 3D solutions. So what I want to talk about today in the webinar is some things that are happening in the industry that I think are driving the need to automate and improve the types of tools that we offer with technical publications, taking advantage of some of the internet and other tools that are available to us today. Take you through the solutions that we have to offer. A little bit of not too long on some existing customers just to show you some ideas of how other people are using the tools and what kind of returns they're getting. Product demonstration, so that'll be a live product demonstration. Prior to getting into that, I've got a couple of videos that show how the product can be used. Talk a little bit about business justification, and then we should have time at the end for questions and answers. And I think with the webinar panel that you see, there should be a text box to enter questions as we go. So if you have questions as we're going, please please enter them in the panel, and we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end as time allows. So let me get started going right now. So as all of you know, when you produce a product, whether it's a machine or whether it's a piece of heavy equipment, a packaging machine, or some other kind of tool that's used by your customers, the actual sorry, I just needed to turn my phone off. I forgot to do that. Sorry about that. So the actual product you deliver is only part of the solution that you need to give to the customer. And there's growing demand out there that we see for not only delivering a product, but managing the performance and the maintenance and the usability of that product throughout its life. And that's bringing back some interesting things into the companies that you're going to have to improve the tools, get things out faster, and as I mentioned earlier, take advantage of some of the newer technologies such as mobile devices, internet, and everything else that's out there today. And what we want to focus on this webinar is how you've got that great digital asset that you've created with the CAD that you use, and you've got a detailed model, and what we want to see is how you can use that information to drive some of these other processes downstream. So one quick example of that would be looking at something like configuration-driven service engineering and management. What does that mean? Well, it means that you have an as-designed bill of materials that that you bring out of your CAD system. But as you go down and start building things like service plans and maintenance plans, you need to think about other things, that service documentation, other things that might need to go into the bill of materials that are part of the service tools, such as tools and equipment, consumables, glues and grease and lubrication, other documentation, specifications, safety regulations, all those kind of things that you need to build into a service plan. And also in some cases, if depending on the type of equipment, you may need to maintain an as-built or as-maintained version of the product, so that if there's field replaceable parts, there may be options that you have when you're doing service and maintenance out in the field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those things as we go through and try to show how the tools can take advantage. But what we really want to focus on is using that CAD data that you have to drive service and support documentation. So this is kind of a snapshot of a process, and I think Madison touched on this in her introduction, that a lot of people have a process that is similar to this or has aspects of this, where you have your 3D CAD data, but then you need to maybe your service bill of the as maintained or as shipped bill of materials sits in another system. So you have to start looking at BOMs and doing manual comparisons of what you have versus what's in the bill of materials that go out. Maybe create spreadsheets that create different parts lists, take screenshots from CAD, or actually use a tool to trace over CAD information, one of the illustration tools that's available, create documents, and then push things out. And then, of course, what happens when you get changes, what happens if there's mistakes in there, how much time do you spend checking? And then we see some challenges that happen in this environment that often all the types of documentation you need to create are kind of isolated from product design. Maybe it's a serial process to pass one thing from one area into the other, and you're creating 2D printed PDF kind of output. Requires a lot of formatting, and that brings in some pressure into the technical documentation area. Often, getting documentation out can often be the thing that holds up shipping the product to the customer. It delays you getting paid, puts a lot of pressure on people to get things done. And then what you ship out is something that maybe looks like this. This is a kind of a fake. It's a demo model to show what a illustration looks like and a parts list that goes out. And that causes some problems down for the customers. Often it's difficult to identify the right part. Customers may order multiple parts to make sure they get the right one. There's limited links between graphics and text, depending on if you're using, which levels of PDF and everything else you're using. It's tough to deploy these things to the web. You can put the PDFs up there, but it's not taking advantage of some of the tools that are out there. Opening up on a mobile device can mean it's a very, very small image to look at. So there's some challenges there. So what we want to do is talk about some of the solutions that we have available and introduce the Cortona 3D product range to you. So Cortona 3D is a suite of tools that will work with most 3D CAD data that's available. It will read in things like JT, solid edge files, NX files, and most other CAD formats out there. In addition, we can read in other information that you may have. So, if you're using supplier parts, you may not have the 3D models, so we need to be able to bring in the text and images that you get from your suppliers into documentation. It has modules that let you create all kinds of different documentation, whether it's a spare parts catalog, internal training materials, manufacturing instructions, service work instructions, all in an environment where you can actually start using the 3D CAD data and other data that you have earlier in the process. And output isn't limited to PDFs and a text document. You can output in multiple formats. So HTML, so with HTML5, it's very easy to distribute to multiple devices. No plugins are needed to view content. I'm going to show some examples of that pretty soon. There's style sheets that we use for setting up automatic formatting and styling. You can export XML content if you have other systems or other partners that you work with to create translated content and other things that you need to do for your technical documentation. We have support for iOS devices and also, of course, PDF. Even though we like to work in 3D, there's still a huge requirement out there to create printable documentation. So when I get to the product demo, I'm going to show you how to publish both. And of course, the benefit for that is you take some of the pressure off of the technical authoring and publications area. There's definite cost benefits, and I'm going to talk about that when we get to business justification. Get products out faster, and make customers happier. One of the areas that we hear about a lot is that it's, if you have, for example, an electronic spare parts catalog, it's much easier for customers to identify the parts they need, order them, and you get a reduced cost because you probably ship the right part first time and have no cost involved with warranty replacements because you ship the wrong one. So there's a lot of good things that can come out of this. So I want to show a short video now that will give you some idea of what's possible with the Cortona product. And so what we're looking at here is a sample portal. So this is emulating a customer support, a customer service portal. You log in. In this case, you search by a serial number. It could be a VIN number, a model number, anything else. And now what you're seeing on the screen in the center here is output from the Cortona 3D product. So this is a 3D introduction, if you like, to the different zones of this sample tractor model. And what we're going to look at here is an animated service sequence to deal with part of the differential, and you're going to see the content that's created, and also link into the spare parts catalog, and also look at some of the illustration content that's created. But you'll notice that the tabs across the top, that's not, just so everybody understands, this is not generated by Cortona. This would be your standard service portal. And what Cortona generates is the content to go up in that different portal area. So you can see here, in this case, you're navigating by zones. And when I get into the product demonstration, you'll see how easy it is to set up these different areas. And these don't have to be set up to align with the design bill of materials. So you can set up those to align to the service bill of materials or maintenance zones that you would want to have in this environment. So now, in this particular portal example, we're looking at, we've closed down some of the tabs, and we're looking at a document that has the option to click on the red 3D buttons for any step here and show a 3D version of the work instructions. And you'll notice things like warnings, instructions, additional tooling options that are brought in, and these are housed in a library that comes with the Cortona 3D product. So now this is the classic example of showing how easy it is to understand an animation. It's very, very easy to put in these kind of instructions to let people quickly understand what they need to do. And there are a number of surveys out there that you can find that will explain to you how the benefits of using the animated work instructions versus even standard printed work instructions. That people learn sequences much faster, and you get less scrap, less rework, and getting it right first time. And you'll notice that some of the tools that are available here for the technician to look at would be the ability to freeze viewpoints, change the viewing angle to suit themselves, zoom in, zoom out, pause at any time to investigate, make it generally easily understand, very, very user-friendly. And as I mentioned, with the tools we have now, there's no third-party plugins required to view this data. This is straight HTML, viewable in any internet browser on any platform that supports HTML5, so Android, iOS, Mac, Windows, even we have customers even using Linux platforms to share this kind of information. So as well as the 3D, of course, it's important to have the 2D images. There are still many cases where you would need to print out and share in a PDF document or a manual these kind of 2D images, and I'm going to show how to create those. And then on the parts side, of course, you want to make it very easy for people to identify and order the parts they need. So in this case, we're focusing on the axle. There's a number of views that have been set up with the Cortona product to create these exploded views and make it easy to identify. There's an easy way to switch between 3D and 2D, and you can see a number of tools at the bottom of the screen that are made available. Whoops, go back. That was operator error. Sorry about that. I can zoom back to where we were in here. So you'll see a number of tools available to help people navigate and find the right parts very, very quickly. And that, including, like I said, exploded views, 3D and 2D options. You can search by part numbers. And you'll see in the example when I show the product, we're going to show how easy it is to link the selections you make here into an e-commerce or other solution that you may use to fulfill orders. The animations that you're seeing are automatically created by the software, so you know it's very, very easy to set these up. So you see here, there's in this case, it's showing an example of putting something into the shopping basket, and there are a number of different ways to do that. And like I said, I'll show you how easy that is when we start with the product demonstration in a few minutes. Okay, so we've now reached the end of the video. So that was a quick look at getting through. What we have here is a link. This is a link to our CAD IT site, and we can make this link available to anybody who wants it. You can open it in any browser. This is a sample of a small sample of an electronic spare parts catalog. And as you can see here, some of the benefits that you have with that. It's very easy to look at on any device. No special end user training. If you can use a web browser, you can use the output, both 2D and 3D, and many, many benefits there. So I'm opening this now. It's going to open in a new tab on my browser here. And so this is live, reading HTML5, delivering over the internet from the CAD IT server. So hopefully there's not too much of a lag in the webinar software, but it's already loaded, so you can see it's pretty quick. It's full 3D. I can navigate here. I have my top level parts list up here. I can reset my view at any time. I can identify parts, and as I mentioned, you have access to many tools such as going transparent, being able to identify the parts on the inside and select them. Or I can just easily select one of the views. So if I pick casing view here, it's going to transition to where I'm at. I don't know if you noticed that, but it changed the parts list to reflect what I can see on the screen. I can switch to a 2D view, so this would be what we see in the printed output. I can still cross-link and select and identify either by selecting on the image here or on the parts list. I can switch between 2D and 3D anytime I want to. There's support for things like section views here, so if you wanted to add these kind of section views to make things easy to identify, it's easy, and you'll see things like springs and everything look pretty good. And it's easy to zoom in and out and identify. So, okay. So that was just a quick example. I'm going to leave that open. We can come back to that later, of a spare parts catalog. A couple of existing customers. So one that a name everybody recognizes, of course, Winnebago. Winnebago used to have the type of catalog output that we showed earlier. The reason I want to talk about this one is there's something good here. So this is what their current site looks like. If you own a Winnebago, you can actually log into their site. This is again a video that we captured from their site with your VIN number or serial number and identify. Now you'll notice that there's limited information here available on the customer site. If you have dealers or resellers, it's possible, depending on how you set your portal up, to have a whole different host of information available to resellers. So, the dealers who do the servicing and order the parts will have access to more information in the parts table over here, such as the ability to order parts. They will be able to build pricing or pick lists to, get back to the customer and tell them what the cost is. But as a user, if you wanted to see options or parts for your Winnebago, you can actually log in and access this on their website. And it's a great way of showing how easy it is to identify parts and move into different areas. And you'll notice things like hoses and tubes are supported, and that there's ways to add those items in when you're authoring to make them flexible and movable if you need to. So again, and the other thing you'll notice here is the combination of having an image or 2D front end here, so a picture, and then that you can select and work through, and then the ability to drill down into individual parts. And again, that's very, very easy to set up. And when I start the product up in a couple of seconds, you'll see how easy it is to actually author and set those individual catalog pages up. So this is a good example of, using the spare parts system easily and quickly to deliver kind of very high quality interactive content to the people who need to see it. Okay, I've just a couple of seconds left on this. The next sample I want to talk about is a customer that's actually creating maintenance content. So rather than a spare parts catalog, they're creating 3D maintenance manuals. And it's Siemens Mobility. They manufacture these, one of the things they manufacture are these trains. And they have a contract with Thameslink in London to supply, you can read this, around 1,200 carriages. They started delivery early in 2016, so early last year. And one of the things about this project was not only were they responsible for delivering the content, they are also fixed price contracts for the maintenance through a 30-year lifespan for the product. So one of the things they were looking for was to really improve the quality of the maintenance documentation, bring the production of the documentation under control, and also be able to quickly train maintenance technicians and provide them better tools to improve the quality in the field, because they needed to manage the cost for, it's a complete managed cost contract. So here is a video from Siemens Mobility of the Cortona 3D authoring a maintenance sequence for replacing some filter bowls here. So one thing you'll notice as this runs through is that the creation of the animation content is done using natural language commands. So you don't have to learn animation skills to do this. You are actually using tools such as remove, replace, invert, disappear, make visible. All those kind of things are built into the software to make it a natural language learning process. So you see examples there: disconnect, inspect, install, loosen, tighten. They're all easy things to pick, and then it brings in some behaviors, creates the timing charts, and you just have to, you can come in and edit individual values as you go through here. But the key is to make it easy to create this kind of content, and add things like arrows to show motion. These are all things that are built into the authoring environment. So in this case, it's easy. You create an animation to remove the bowls, and then there's a great command in the authoring environment called duplicate and then invert. So if you need to remove and replace, it's a case of simply do it once and then use that duplicate and invert, and it reverses the sequence and will give you the easy option to replace. So the other thing that happens at the same time here is, as you're authoring this content down here, it auto-generates the documentation content. So when you generate the printed document, there's an XML editing tool built into the Cortona 3D suite that lets you create this kind of output automatically. So what that looks like when you deliver it is something like this, which is pretty similar to what we saw in the portal example earlier. And then what that will look like when you deliver that to the customer, so the maintenance technician, you have documentation. So there's two options that come out of that same authoring. There's this printed document, and you'll see this is a formatted sheet with warnings and symbols and other health and safety things built into it that can all be easily put in when you're authoring. And there's also a 3D, as well as the printable version here. There's also a 3D version that has that same thing we saw earlier, the ability to click on the 3D button and then see the same process with the warnings and everything else attached. So these kind of warnings can pop up. They have to be acknowledged by the technician before the steps continue. And you'll also notice that there's the ability to have things, what we call job mode, which provides the ability to record information back from a sequence. So if you're wanting to track and then pass information back to an MES system, for example, it's possible to say, you know, when you complete the operation, record that point, and then obviously, you know, that's going to vary a little bit depending on what systems you have, but it's possible to capture that information and pass it back. So very, very easy for the technicians to understand, very, very easy for authoring, and then very, very easy to improve the performance of the products out in the field because of this. Okay, so we're just coming to the end of this. And then what was the benefit to them? So you can read what they have there. So they had approximately 700 documents to produce to get the first trains out in the field. They did that by a team of 4 people in 14 months, which they said was about half the time that it traditionally took them to do that. The big thing for them was the maintenance documentation was ready 6 months ahead of the product launch. So that was significant advantage for them. And then from the technician side, they're, you know, the clear and easy, up-to-date systems. The technicians have information with them. If they have the mobile devices, you know, they have ruggedized PCs that they take out in the field with them, then they have that kind of 3D information available to them wherever they go. And you can see that so far they've been, when we put this story together, they've been able to track that they've reduced the time spent on maintenance by about 30%. So 50% less time to produce the docs, 30% less time in the field actually carrying out maintenance. So it's helping them achieve their goals. Okay, so enough about that. I want to get into a product demonstration now. So a little bit about the product again. So it's a single software solution that provides graphic and text authoring in one environment. It has modules for creating parts manuals and catalogs, service and manufacturing work instructions, owner's manuals. There's an e-learning module built into the software. And it's, even if you start thinking of one of the topics, so I'm going to show a spare parts catalog example. So you'll see how easy that is to use, but the same software has the ability to do those other things. So once you bring it in, it lays you a foundation for you to start looking at other areas and bringing electronic documentation and improvements across other areas of the business. One thing I do want to mention, even though we've been talking a lot about 3D, a lot of the questions we often get are about the generation of 2D graphics. And one of the things that the Cortona product is very good at, despite, you know, it's designed for 3D, but it's also very good at creating the 2D graphics from the 3D geometry, and I'm going to show that to you. So it has good hidden line tools, it generates callouts automatically, generates hotspots automatically. So if you're looking to have a combination of 3D and 2D, or even 2D only, it's still a good way to go to create the 2D content. And you can also capture images, or if you have you know, high-end JPEGs with you know, photorealistic rendering and things dropped in, you know, factory environments and things that you wanted to put in as a front page, that even lets you, or other images, you can even bring those into the project pretty easily. There is a full 2D vector graphics editing tool that's built into the Cortona family. So when one of the modules you get is for 2D editing, and I'm going to show how that interacts with 3D, but that lets you manage all of the things. So for example, when we automatically put call-outs on a product, on a, you know, image, if you want to move them, it's very, very simple to do that, and it gives you access to all that stuff. And like I said, I wanted to mention this because it's a lot of the questions we often get are around that. And the other thing, as we mentioned, you do it once and you can use that same authored content to publish out to many, many different areas. So if you want to publish 3D and a PDF document and an XML document out of that same authored model, it's very, very easy to do that. Okay, so let me switch out of the presentation for a second, and I'm going to start the rapid catalog product. So I'm going from 0 here, as you can see. So rapid catalog is one of the modules, and what it does, it takes the Cortona 3D tool and sets it up for authoring a catalog environment. So the screen is, this is the start screen for me. I've got item tree. I haven't got any geometry yet, but I've got item tree, collections, and I'll talk about that as we go, catalog pages. First thing I want to do is start a new project. So if I pick open project, you'll just see we organize things by, projects inside Cortona. So in this case, I'll pick my build demo projects. Then here's, something I prepared earlier, but I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to say, I'm going to show you from 0. So I'm going to say a new project in my demo projects, and you'll see these specifications are some of those style sheets that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to pick a generic parts catalog specification with a shopping basket that we put in and publish out to an HTML5 environment. So I'm going to say OK. So then you'll see it's actually done a couple of other things for me. It's added what we call a parts table in here, and then an area for me to build catalog pages. So now the next thing I need to do is import geometry. So I'm just going to use a simple JT file. This is part of the software. It's called Rapid Generator. You can just use this. Let me check my settings to make sure I've got the right one here, because I was doing something earlier. Yep, okay, good. Look, oh, let me pick this one. Okay, so again, this makes sure it reads the metadata from the JT file and puts it in the parts table in the correct place. So if I pick start now, it's going to ask me what's the name of the JT file, and this is what's known as a shattered JT file. So you have the top level assembly, then all the parts are in the folder underneath it. Yeah. So I use an evaluation version of the software just because it's easier for me when I travel around, and I can update my licenses. So that's why I keep getting those messages. So now it's reading the JT model. And you can see it's counting up the number of parts for me. It's completing the information. It says OK. Let me click OK here. And close this down. So the first thing you'll notice now is it adds the parts list for me. And you don't see any geometry yet, and that's because if I highlight it, there's a number of different display modes. One of the things that you can do is choose, I think a lot of software like this lets you do this. You can choose how good the display is, from high quality to low quality. That's kind of there for history, for bandwidth reasons. If you had a low quality internet connection, you might want to reduce the quality of the graphics to make display faster. With modern internet, that's less of an issue. So I'm going to pick initial. So what initial does, it says going to be the same as the source data. Okay, so when I click on this and I pick 3D, it's going to show me this part in 3D. So I've got this simple part here. And it's got a few parts in it, just enough for me to play with. So this is my item tree here. So this would be the same as the assembly list in the CAD model. This shows me the item list that we create automatically. So 2 of these, 4 of these. It creates a thumbnail for each of the parts that are in the model so that we have access to this and can easily identify things as we go through the part. And also you'll see we've got these 2D image and 2D preview tabs. I'll come back to those in a second. So what I want to do now is take this and build a catalog page. So I'm just going to say base is where I'm at right now. So this lets me build a hierarchical structure for my catalog. So I'm going to say activate this page, and I'll call it front page for something better. First thing I want to do is orient the view, and you'll notice I've got this red triangle on this, or red box on the screen, sorry. What this is what we call our display safe view. So even though a lot of people have widescreen displays, we still want to assume that if you get down to a mobile device, you might go back to a different format. So anything inside this red box becomes visible. Now in orienting the view, I have all the standard views that are available to me. So I can say, you know, all the isometric views and all the orthographic views that I want to have. I'm just going to freehand it for speed here. So I'm going to say store this view so that when I publish my catalog, this is what the view is going to look like. So I activated the page. Yeah. So you'll notice that down here these rows are grayed out. If I say activate with visible geometry, you'll see that they're no longer grayed out and they're now visible. So if I then do something simple and say, what does that look like? Let me go to preview. So this is now going to preview what my front page will look like in the catalog. And I haven't done anything yet other than put some graphics in place. And so you'll see it's using HTML5 and got those up on the screen there. So here you'll notice I've got a couple of things here from my style sheet. I'll explain those in a second. So here I've got my 3D model. I can move it around. I can, you know, use that transparency tool that is there. I can, you know, click on parts inside and get that cross-linking across here. Okay. Yep. So I say, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's going to look. Now I want to build some 2D views and some content to go underneath that. So close. So first thing I want to do is let me say preview the 2D, what a 2D hidden line is going to look like. So I say yes. Let's add some callouts on there. So the format for the callouts is just something I put up to make them show up pretty easily on the screen. You can actually, you know, have complete control over these, whether you have circles, rectangles, colors, text size, and everything else, as you would over normal callouts. So now I've got this here. I'm going to say save this image. And so it says this is your 2D image. Let me give it a name. I can call it whatever I want. So just the same as before. So that's saved. And I'm going to say OK for now. OK. So that's good. So now let me preview the catalog again. And you'll see that we'll have, it'll come up faster this time because it's, you know, it's Windows, and once you've got it loaded once, it comes there. It's there on my display. So now we can actually come in and look at not only 3D, but I've got my 2D image there as well. So this is same thing, navigatable, just, you know, selecting, cross-selecting, and everything else there. So let me explain these two buttons here right now. So I'm going to say, you know, I want to build a quote here. So I'm going to pick this part. I'm going to say add that to my pick list. So this is adding it to a quote. So now rather than putting it in a shopping basket, this particular setup lets me build a quote list and then email it off to someone else. So I'm going to say add to quote, and I can come through and pick a number of parts in here, do the same thing, add to quote, and then when I'm ready, I can look at my quoted list and generate an email. So this is completely configurable. So if you wanted it to go straight to a shopping cart, pass off to an e-commerce system, we could do that. In this case, it's designed so that it would email off to the customer service department, and they would be able to get back to the customer for the quote. So, okay. So I'm just going to clear this. We don't need that anymore. All right. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to come back in here, and let's say I want to build a second page to my catalog that has an exploded view of this center section. So let me come in here, pick one of the tools that lets me build a new page, and there's a whole number there. So I did what we call cloned it, so it carries over those attributes, and let me just rename it to exploded view 1. There. Okay, so now I've got this here. Again, I can set my viewpoint for this page, but I'm going to change that as we go through. What I want to do now is say I'm only interested in this center section. So if I come in here and, you know, select some of these parts, I can actually delete them. Now it doesn't delete them from the model, it's just deleting them from this page. So same thing here, delete. Yeah, I don't want that either. So, and you got all the standard Windows kind of selection tools, so you can do multiple, Control, Shift, that kind of stuff. So let's say that's what I want. I've got my model here. I can orient this a little different. But what I really want to do is create an exploded view. So I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to come to one of my wizards, and we have a lot of different wizards in the product. So let me say explode assembly. And so I'm just going to pull this over here so we can see what's going on. So this lists all the parts that it's selected, and you can cross-check that on there. If I say next, we have a choice of linear, or if you're doing a turbine or something, you have radial explosions. Next. And then now I can orient the direction or pick the direction. I can just pick that up and snap it to any part of this. And I can just eyeball for the sake of the demo and say, yeah, I want to explode in that direction and that amount. So then it will create for me a view which I can zoom in. Let's say we wanted to change the order, so we wanted this conrod to be, in a different place. You can move it up, and so it will, reorient it in the view. So you can just easily, play with that. Same as this. Let's say we want to move this one to the back or the front. You can just move it up, and it will just move things around. So you have complete control and complete flexibility over where these things go. So I'm going to say, yeah, that's good enough for me. Right now, this is what we call the anchor part, and that's what I want. If I wanted to change that, I could do just by using the set anchor. I'm going to say next and finish. So now it adds in some, I'm going to just eyeball the viewpoint there to make it easy, so when it goes in 2D, we can see it. There, that's good enough for me. That's good enough. Yeah, let me position it better. Very easy to do. Great. So now I've got that. If I come into my, one thing I'm going to do here first before I do that is I'm going to say, you'll notice it's put red X's on the parts that are not in this view. If I say in my product rows deactivate the deleted geometry, then they won't even appear in the parts list. If there's an option to have them in the parts list but not selectable, I'm just going to say delete them, and now you'll see they've been grayed out completely. So now if I go to my 2D preview, it's going to create my exploded view. Same thing, I can have my callouts, just like we did before. Generate the image. So call it explode. Say OK. Great. Now I've got 2 pages in my catalog. So let me go back to my preview. And you'll see now that in the pull-down menu up here on the left, we're going to have an option for both front and, so I got my front view there. And if I pick my exploded view, you see it's going to build that out for me and cut the bottom list. If I go to my 2D, you'll see it's the 2D view exactly as we saved it. Okay. So one thing I want to do, one thing we see that's pretty common if you have a larger machine, you may want to have parts for reference so people can see context. So let's say we wanted to make this housing a reference part. So I'm going to close that down again. And what I want to do is pick this part and say set as reference, or set as background in this case. So I say OK. And now if I go back to my 2D image, because that's a background part, I'm going to update my 2D image. And if I say edit now, it's going to launch that 2D editor that I talked about. So we have this full 2D editor built in. You'll see it's automatically put things on different layers. So, we can toggle that layer visibility on and off for individual parts. And what I didn't do was update the image. So let me come back here. I don't want to change that. Oops. If I say update, because I needed to update it, there you go. And now if I go into edit, you'll see that the reference part should be on its own layer. And for some reason, did I select that? I thought I did. I should be able to pick the reference layer. Okay, let me do that again. I'm going to cancel that. Set it, it's a background part. Okay. Oops. Okay, that should be coming up as a separate part. For some reason, I obviously had something not quite right there. I apologize for that, but it should have come up on us. But you can see the concept here of the different layers. I'll come back and fix that in a second. Okay. Okay, so the idea is I've got my catalog here. I've got my reference part there, and it will show as a reference part only if I preview here. Keep my eye on the time here. I think after this I will switch back to the PowerPoint quickly just to finish this off and get into questions. So now if I go to my exploded view, you can see that this is now no longer selectable. It's a reference part, and all the other parts remain selectable, but that is now there just for, I should have picked a better transparency, but just there for reference. Okay. All right, so that's how easy it is to take us, a CAD model. In this case, it was a JT model, bring it into Cortona, very, very quickly author a spare parts catalog with the links into, and in this case, it was an email system using a predefined style sheet. Okay, let me step back into the presentation just to finish this off. I want to quickly talk about a couple of things. So you may have noticed, if you're familiar with Rapid Author and you have previous number, version 9.1 just came out. As with all software, we continually keep it updated. Many, many new features in there. Business justification, how do you justify this? So the cost, one of the things that we've learned with CAD IT is that we can sit down with you and Ally PLM and we can actually work out a business justification for your environment. So we take in things like, how many illustrations do you have in a year? How many work instructions do you create? How many warranty errors do you get by shipping, or what kind of warranty support do you need to do? And we can build all that into we have a pretty complex financial model that will sit behind this and look at software costs and maintenance costs and, how the savings you'll get on improving performance, of illustrations, and build that ROI model that will show you when you can expect to see a payback on your investment. And typically with Cortona, even with a small business, that's usually in way less than a year that we see that first payback. You'll see the justification very, very quickly. So that's a service that we can provide with Ally PLM to build these ROI models specifically for you. And where you see the business value, obviously internally you'll get that, whether you're building product manuals. In fact, it's one thing I was going to show you really quickly before we finish. Faster, easier documentation and interactive media out there, a better customer experience that, right first time, customers are happy, customers like that modern, the ability to use modern tools such as, iPads and other things out there to an internet to interact with their documentation of models. And our customers typically see somewhere between 50 to 80% reduction in time and resources in delivery and maintenance of the content. So that's all I had in slides. One thing I do want to do is I want to skip back to the product for a second. One thing I didn't show was if you want to, right now we've done 3D, if you wanted to make a PDF manual from here, I can simply say publish as. So if you're still going to make that printed documentation, this time I'm going to pick a PDF document and put it in my on my desktop. I have a demo temp data folder. Untitled is fine. Probably got one there. So save. Next. Okay to overwrite it. And so what this is going to do now, it's going to build me a PDF where it will take those 2D images that I saved and the parts list that you see down here and put that in a pre-formatted style sheet. Now this is just a basic out-of-the-box style sheet I'm using. So it will just, be pretty simple with the views. So I've got, my front page, I've got my second page, and then the parts list there. But so that's from that same content. We've got both the 3D and printed. And this is, like I said, style sheet driven, so it's very, very easy to come in and update that. Okay, with that, that's the last slide I had. If you need more information, both mine and Madison's contact details are up on the screen here. And now I think we have a chance to answer some questions.
Bill, this is Madison again. We had a question that I saw on the questions board there that asked about if you could run this with a PDM system or without, and I answered that you could run it in association with Team Center or without independently. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. So that if you're using it with Team Center, then there is a Team Center connector for Cortona 3D that lets you store all the Cortona items as items under the assembly structure in Team Center, so you can have the benefit of, updates and where things are used and revision history and things like that inside Team Center. But as you saw, what I did was completely standalone, where you can just read the CAD or JT data directly into Cortona and use it in a standalone environment. So both work equally as well. Obviously, with the Team Center connector, there are some tools you get that you can drive workflows from Team Center. But it works in both environments.
The other question, Bill, was if it will work with SAP PLM, SAP.
Yeah, so when you say, it depends on the definition of work with. So with SAP, I mean, obviously if your bills of materials and data is stored in SAP, I don't know if you noticed when I did the rapid generator part to create the content, there was an option for a BOM, so you can read data in from other systems. Obviously, if you're driving it from SAP PLM, you can launch the application, but the Team Center connector we have will give you a whole host of things that that you can control from Team Center. Where with SAP, it's more of a passing the data and the bill of materials to the application, and that would need to be configured. But yeah, it's possible to utilize other PLM environments, but we only have the connector available for Team Center. So,
anybody else has a question, if you could type it in either to the chat or to the questions area there on your panel for your webinar, for the GoToMeeting webinar.
Yeah, I see one or two others in there. I'm having trouble viewing it in my panel. So.
Okay, so one of them is which one is better to create machining instructions?
So if we're talking about documenting machining instructions, then you could do that in the the Cortona tool with the rapid manual option. But if you're talking about CNC machining instructions, then you would need it doesn't do CNC type programming. If that answers the question. But if if you wanted to create the text and graphic version of the instruction the stages, you could do that. But if you're looking for CNC machining or programming a press or something like that, then that would be a separate software package.
I think that's all the questions we have for now, Bill. So
okay.
If anybody has any further questions, we'll be happy to answer those. You can see our contact information there. You can contact either one of us, and we'll be happy to get your questions answered for you. But thank you very much, Bill, for your excellent presentation. And thanks, everybody, for joining us for this webinar. It'll be posted on our website as well, so you can review it, or if you know somebody else that would like to watch it, you can send the link to them. Thanks again, and have a good day.
Great. Thanks, everybody.